You have Tinder, you have dating apps, you have algorithms that analyze your behavior and suggest compatible strangers based on thousands of data points. Your ancestors had none of that. No phone, no photos, no profile, no way to browse, no way to search beyond whatever you could see with your own eyes inside a group of maybe 25 people, most of whom were your relatives. So here is the question that should stop you cold. How did they do it? How did ancient humans with no language for love, no concept of dating, no privacy, no system, no rules that anyone had written down, actually find a partner? How did they attract someone? How did they signal interest? What happened when two people wanted the same person? What happened when nobody wanted you at all? The answers are stranger, more sophisticated, and more revealing about human nature than almost anything you'll hear about our ancient past. Because it turns out that finding a partner was not simple for ancient humans. It was one of the most complex social challenges they faced, and the way they solved it may be the single biggest reason our species survived while everything else went extinct. Start with the math, because the math is the whole problem. Ancient humans lived in small bands, not villages, not tribes of hundreds, bands tight, mobile groups of roughly 20 to 30 individuals who moved together, hunted together, slept near each other every single night. This was your entire world. These were all the people you knew. Now subtract the ones who are too old, subtract the ones who are too young, subtract the ones who are already paired, subtract the ones who are your direct relatives, your siblings, your parents, your cousins. Do that math honestly, and in a band of 25 people, the number of viable, available, unrelated potential partners might be 2 or 3 on a good day. This created a problem that modern humans almost never have to face. Not too many options, but almost none. And it wasn't just a romantic problem. It was a biological one. Inbreeding mating with close relatives produces offspring with compounded genetic defects. Ancient humans couldn't articulate the genetics, but they could observe the outcomes. Inbred children were weaker, sicker, less likely to survive. Natural selection punished groups that bred too closely and rewarded groups that figured out how to find partners from outside. Research published in the journal Science, based on genetic analysis of 34,000-year-old remains from a site in Russia called Sungheir, confirmed something remarkable. Even in the Upper Paleolithic, humans were deliberately seeking partners from outside their immediate group. Not occasionally, systematically. As a rule, the people at Sungheir were part of a network, a wider community of perhaps 200 people spread across multiple bands, connected by shared culture and exchange systems, within which partners were chosen according to understood rules. Rules nobody had written down. Rules that existed purely in the social memory of the group. In other words, ancient humans didn't just stumble into partnerships. They built an entire social architecture, a system specifically designed to solve the partner problem. And that system was sophisticated enough that researchers believe it may be a significant part of why modern humans survived, while Neanderthals, who showed no evidence of similar mating networks, eventually disappeared. We didn't just out-hunt Neanderthals, we outdated them. Before you could find a partner, you had to make yourself worth finding. And in a world without words like attractive or successful or good genes, how did you communicate that? The answer is, everything about you communicated it constantly, whether you meant it to or not. Your body was the first signal. Symmetry, the degree to which the left and right sides of your face and body matched, was a direct indicator of developmental health. A symmetrical face meant you had grown up without serious infections, nutritional deficiencies, or genetic errors severe enough to disrupt development. Ancient humans couldn't consciously articulate this, but they responded to it. Studies of mate preference across dozens of cultures, including those with minimal contact with the modern world, consistently show that symmetry is universally perceived as attractive. This preference wasn't learned, it was built in. Your smell was the second signal, and this one is even more fascinating. Human body odor carries information about your immune system, specifically your MHC genes, the part of your immune system that identifies and fights pathogens. People are instinctively attracted to the smell of partners whose MHC profile is different from their own. Not randomly different, specifically different in ways that would produce offspring with broader, more robust immune systems. Ancient humans were literally using their noses to find genetically compatible partners, and they were doing it accurately without knowing what an immune system was. Your behavior was the third signal, and probably the loudest. Could you hunt? Could you navigate? Could you make decisions under pressure? Were you someone the group relied on or someone the group carried? In a world where survival was a daily project, competence was the most attractive quality that existed. A man who came back with meat was not just providing food, he was demonstrating a cluster of traits that would make him a viable partner and father. A woman who knew which plants were safe, which roots could treat a fever, where the water sources were in a dry season. She wasn't just useful. She was desirable. In every direction, capability was the ancient equivalent of everything a modern dating profile tries to communicate. And then there was the fourth signal, the one that surprises people most: jewelry. The oldest known personal ornaments, pierced shells used as beads, date back roughly 130,000 years. Long before cave paintings, long before sophisticated tools, humans were decorating themselves, not for warmth, not for protection, purely to signal something to other humans. What were they signaling? The same things people signal with jewelry today. I have resources. I have time to make beautiful things. I am connected to a community that values beauty. I am someone worth looking at. The beads found at Songhir, the same site where the mating network research was done, were extraordinary. A single burial contained over 10,000 individually drilled mammoth ivory beads. Each one would have taken roughly an hour to make. That is 10,000 hours of work buried with one person. That is not decoration. That is status communication so loud it echoes across 34,000 years. You had a signal. Now you needed an audience. Inside your own band, you already knew everyone. You had grown up with them, you had hunted with them, argued with them, survived cold seasons with them. There was almost no mystery left, which meant the real partner finding happened at the edges, at the places where bands overlapped, traded, or deliberately came together. Seasonal gatherings were the prehistoric equivalent of every social event in human history rolled into one. When food was abundant during a migration route, at a reliable water source, after a large hunt, multiple bands would converge on the same location. For a brief window of time, your world expanded from 25 people to potentially 200. Suddenly, there were strangers. People you had never seen. People whose smell you didn't know, whose competence you hadn't evaluated, whose jewelry you hadn't studied. These gatherings were almost certainly the primary context for partner finding. They were also almost certainly the context for the rules, because when groups come together with the explicit or implicit purpose of exchanging mates, you need a system for who can be offered, who has the right to choose, what the obligations are on both sides. Modern hunter-gatherer societies, studied by anthropologists as the closest living analog to prehistoric social structures, show exactly this pattern. Elaborate ceremonies surrounding partner exchange, gift-giving between families, rules governing which kin categories can and cannot pair, rituals that mark the transition. Some researchers believe that the jewelry, ochre body paint and elaborate ornamentation found across upper Paleolithic sites weren't just personal decoration, they were group identity markers. Ways of saying, we are this band and you are that band, and the rule is that this band mates with that band. Beads of a specific style worn by specific groups functioned like a tribe's flag, simultaneously signaling availability, identity, and the social rules governing who you could approach. And then there was the campfire. After the hunt, after the gathering, after the food, the fire at night was the original social arena. Darkness created intimacy, warmth created proximity. The absence of danger created the only real relaxation of the prehistoric day. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups show that nighttime fire conversations are dominated by storytelling at roughly 81% compared to just 6% during the day. Around the fire, people showed who they were. They told stories, they demonstrated humor, creativity, emotional depth. They revealed things about themselves that the daylight's practical demands never permitted. A person who could hold a group of people wrapped around a fire, who could make them laugh or frighten them or move them, was demonstrating something that had no name yet, but that we now recognize as charisma. And charisma, then as now, was extraordinarily attractive. Now here is the part of this story that will genuinely shock you. Ancient humans didn't only find partners within their own species. For a long period of prehistoric history, modern humans, Homo sapiens, shared the planet with at least two other human species, the Neanderthals, who occupied Europe and parts of Western Asia, and the Denisovans, who ranged across Eastern Asia. These were not distant cousins in the metaphorical sense. They were different enough to be classified as separate species, but close enough that when they met, they could and did produce offspring. We know this because of DNA. Up to 2% of the genome of people with non-African ancestry today came from Neanderthals. People from parts of Oceania and Southeast Asia carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA. This is not ancient history in the abstract. It is literally written in your cells. But a study published in the journal Science in early 2026, based on genetic analysis from the University of Pennsylvania, found something even more specific and fascinating. The interbreeding between Neanderthals and modern humans was not random. It followed a consistent pattern. Neanderthal males mating with modern human females far more often than the reverse. Think about what that means. It means that at some point, somewhere on a Eurasian plain or in a forest clearing, a Neanderthal man and a modern human woman looked at each other, two members of entirely different species, and found each other attractive enough to mate. And that encounter, repeated across hundreds or thousands of individual instances over thousands of years, left a mark on the human genome that persists to this day. Why Neanderthal males and human females specifically? Researchers suggest it was mate preference, that something about Neanderthal males was attractive to human females, or that human females who encountered Neanderthal males were more likely to view them as viable partners. The Neanderthal males were, on average, significantly more physically powerful than modern human males. Broader chests, more muscular builds, extraordinary physical strength evidenced in their bone structure. In a world where physical capability was one of the primary signals of mate quality, that may have been enough. Your DNA is, in part, the result of an ancient woman finding a Neanderthal man attractive. That is not a metaphor, it is a measurable genetic fact. Finding an attractive person was only the beginning. The harder problem was winning. In small groups with limited options, competition for partners was direct, visible, and consequential. There was no disappearing into a crowd, no ghosting, no quietly moving on. If two men wanted the same woman, or two women wanted the same man, everyone in the group knew it and watched what happened. The most direct form of competition was physical. In our closest primate relatives, chimpanzees, males fight for access to females. Dominant males get more mating opportunities. The evidence in human anatomy suggests that early humans had some of this too. Males are on average larger than females, which is a common feature of species where males compete physically for mates. But the degree of size difference in humans is much smaller than in gorillas or chimps. This tells researchers that physical dominance was important, but it was never the only thing that mattered, because humans had something no other animal had: reputation. In a group of 25 people who had known each other their entire lives, your reputation was everything. It preceded you into every interaction. It survived you after every mistake. The man who had proven himself reliable in a crisis, who had shared food when he didn't have to, who had defended a weaker group member, who had made a decision under pressure that saved everyone, had a reputation that no amount of physical strength could easily overcome. This is why generosity was such a powerful courtship signal in ancient human societies. Sharing food, especially meat, which required significant effort to obtain, communicated multiple things simultaneously. I have more than I need. I am capable enough to provide surplus. I am generous enough to share it. I am worth being around. All of that in a single act of handing someone a piece of food. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies consistently show that the most generous hunters, the ones who share the most meat with the widest group, have the most children. Not the strongest hunters, the most generous ones. Generosity was not charity, it was the most effective mating strategy available in a small group context. This is why pair bonding in humans evolved to be as strong as it did. The neurochemistry of human romantic attachment, the oxytocin, the dopamine, the serotonin shifts that come with long-term partnership, is not decorative. It is functional. It exists because two parents who are strongly bonded to each other are dramatically more effective at raising offspring than two individuals with weak attachment. Human children are extraordinarily helpless for extraordinarily long. A human infant cannot walk for a year, cannot feed itself for years beyond that, cannot survive without intensive adult investment for nearly a decade. That investment required both parents to be committed, not just to the child, but to each other. The ancient commitment was also a social one. Across virtually every hunter-gatherer society that anthropologists have studied, partner exchange between groups was formalized through ceremony, gifts between families, rituals marking the union, public acknowledgement by the group. These were not trivial social gestures. They were the mechanism by which the intergroup mating network maintained itself, the contractual layer of a system that existed to prevent inbreeding, strengthen alliances between bands, and ensure that both families had mutual obligations to support the new pair. In other words, the thing we call a wedding, the public declaration, the exchange of gifts, the gathering of both families is at least 34,000 years old. Possibly much older. The specific forms change, the function doesn't. So how did ancient humans actually find a partner? Not on an app, not through an algorithm, not by swiping through hundreds of strangers in their pocket. They built social networks that spanned multiple bands and hundreds of people, specifically designed to make partner finding possible. They decorated themselves with thousands of hours of handcrafted jewelry to signal status and identity. They used their smell literally, unconsciously to evaluate genetic compatibility. They competed through reputation and generosity rather than just brute strength. They found partners at seasonal gatherings that functioned as prehistoric social events, and they sealed those partnerships through ceremonies that look surprisingly like the ones we still practice today. And some of them, enough of them, to change the human genome, permanently found partners in the most unexpected place of all, a different species entirely. Every system you use to find love, signal attraction, or demonstrate your worth to another person, every compliment, every gift, every joke, told to make someone laugh, every effort to be seen as capable and generous and worth choosing is an iteration of something your ancestors were already doing 200,000 years ago. The tools changed, the algorithm didn't.